Hi, everyone. Dr. John Alchemy with RateFast. Today, I'm here to talk to you about staging multi-body part claims and sequential impairment rating. Now, if you're like most people in California workers' compensation, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. And what I wanted to do today was to explain to you how to handle impairment cases with multiple body parts. The majority of injuries in California are somewhere between 1 and 3 body parts, but once in a while, you're going to come across these catastrophic injuries where someone was in a car accident or fell from 25 feet. Or had some other type of really unfortunate injury, and it's injured multiple body parts, including psychiatric injuries, post-traumatic stress, depression, multiple orthopedic injuries. I've had people run over by vehicles. They've had their intestines removed. They've had their bladders reconstructed. They've had most of this skin torn off their arm and had to have some synthetic skin put on, and all kinds of horrible injuries. And these injuries are terrible. And usually what happens is the person gets injured and they report all of these injuries. I've had a head injury, my neck got hurt, my right shoulder got hurt, my left knee hurts, I'm dizzy, I can't see very well, my hearing, and blah, blah, blah. We've got 8 or 10 body systems going on here that need to be cared for, brought to maximal medical improvement, and then rated. Okay. And it's the rating part I want to talk about. Traditionally in California, people have not thought very much about the doctor and the doctor's motivation and the doctor's ability to do impairment reports on multiple body parts. But that's why we're here today. That's really what I want to talk about. So traditionally, what happens is a person has, like, let's say they have 5 body parts. They have 5 body parts on their injury. Some parts of their injuries were more urgent and received immediate and more complete treatment than others. And now we're maybe 18 months, 2 years down the road, and the case still isn't closed. And the doctor traditionally is expected, although this is written nowhere in labor code or the AMA guides, and it's usually the expectation that the doctor is going to create an impairment report when all of the body parts have reached maximal medical improvement. Now, the reason I want to bring that up is there are a couple of misconceptions about that. Again, nowhere does it say in the AMA guides that all the body parts have to reach maximal medical improvement before an impairment rating can be done. And nowhere in labor code does it say that all the body parts have to reach maximal medical improvement in order for the doctor to generate an impairment report on that body part. Now, the reason I bring this up is I can tell you multiple times where both functioning as a QME and a primary treating doctor, that someone had 5 body parts hurt. They were all reported, and throughout the treatment, they received care for their neck and their shoulder mostly. And maybe their wrist hurt a little bit, but it wasn't enough, and they were having a hard enough time getting treatment for their neck and shoulder, et cetera, et cetera. So the case just went on and got rated for a neck and a shoulder. There were no impairment ratings on the wrist, no impairment ratings on the knee that was hurt. The patient was getting by well enough, didn't really need treatment, but it's, bothers her sometimes. And so now what happens is that the insurance company has received and accepted an impairment report. The claim was really 5 body parts, but only 2 were rated. And so the point here being is that if there is a recordable body part on a claim that's recognized on the transfer of care sheet or the summary sheet by the insurance company, every single body part that's recordable is required to have an impairment report. I mean, the law is really clear about that. It's the primary treating physician's job, or the QME, that they really have to rate all of the body parts. Even if they're asymptomatic, they still require a rating. Why is this important? Because what happens is that, an impairment report, one of the main functions of an impairment report is to assign and define liability for the injured body part. It defines liability by means of creating an impairment value of functional loss, telling the stakeholders what the future care is, if there's additional pain, if it requires an Alvarez-Guzman rating, which we're not going to go into, and what the future care is going to be, and functional limitations. So it defines liability in all of those ways. And all of those things are really necessary for a settlement and for an employer to decide, can I accept this employee back to work? The problem is that when we have injuries where there's magnitudes more of symptoms in some body parts and not others, the cases tend to get glossed over, and impairment ratings only happen on a couple of the body parts. Why is this a problem? A, the injured worker is not getting proper credit for all of their rights of future care because it's not being clearly defined. B, it's causing all kinds of headaches down the road for the stakeholders who are being involved. And I've seen this multiple times before. I've seen cases get transferred in where the patients had shoulder pain, but they've had 4 surgeries on their neck and 2 surgeries on their knee, and the shoulder pain was never really addressed. It went on to get rated by the primary treater or the QME, but it was never talked about. It never had therapy, didn't have any diagnostic tests, all kinds of things. Basically, it was hurt and never treated, but sort of carried along in the claim because the other body parts were deemed more medically urgent, so to speak. And now you can imagine the problems that we run into. It's a year or 2 later, the patient transfers in. On the first visit, you're talking to them and they're like, his shoulder, this claim is from 5 years ago. My shoulder's really hurting me. It's actually getting worse. And you ask them, well, when's the last time you had physical therapy? Never. When was your last x-ray? Never had one. How about the physical exam? You look through the chart, there's no physical exam on the shoulder, nothing. And the point I'm getting at is this was an accepted body part and the doctors failed to rate it. And it's basically gone rogue and has not been treated. It's not been rated. And now it's going to come back a couple of years later to haunt everyone and basically start treatment from zero at a time remote from when they were really hurt. And so the whole point is that in the current way that insurance companies expect doctors to do ratings and doctors think about ratings are that I have to wait for everything to get MMI and then I'm going to do my impairment report. The only thing that kind of thinking does is it drags out the case and it makes doctors even less likely in California to want to do impairment reports. Why? Because who is going to sit down and do an impairment report on 17 body parts from a catastrophic injury? And on top of that, all of the body parts have reached maximal medical improvements at different times. Maybe the knee was better in 2 months, but the shoulder was 2 years because it had to have surgery and pain management. And the neck is still being considered for a fusion, for instance. The knee should have been rated a long time ago. And the whole point I'm trying to make is that body parts should be rated when they become maximally medical improved. And the reason is that the impairment care is much more accurate and it's much faster and it gives more complete treatment, thought and consideration to all of the body parts. So if you're doing 2 body parts and you think that they're going to be maximally medically improved around the same time, fine. If you're a doctor and you're willing to sit down and do, a shoulder and a knee in the same impairment report, fine. No one will fault you for that. But what does not get done is the person who's going to have their neck surgery 2 years from now and the knee has resolved and getting the rating on the knee done. Now, the rating on the knee does not mean that the patient is fully maximally medically improved. It just means that the knee is improved and the knee is ready to be packaged and the liability identified and assigned on the knee. The claim is still open. And the individual may still be requiring TTD payments because they are not maximally medically improved. Part of their body is, but the whole one is not. And the case really deserves to be settled when everything is at maximal medical improvement. But you're actually doing everyone a favor by impairment rating body parts as they become MMI because they're much easier to keep track of. It's much easier to set the reserves for the insurance company more accurately because they're going to have a thoughtful and they're going to have a timely report, and they're going to see that knee come in right now. And then they're going to see that shoulder come in another 6 months from now. And their impairment report and the quality is going to be much better. Plus, the body part has been rated when it reaches maximal medical improvement. One of the problems you can get into if you delay these things is that all of a sudden you start to get derivative claims. It's not rated. It's still open at 3 years. And now my other knee is hurting and my ankle is hurting. And now all we're looking at is starting to add more body parts into the claim, not less. And so everyone's done, in my opinion, a disservice when the body parts are rated all at one time, because you don't get a good rating. A lot of things are not addressed, and the primary treaters don't want to do it because the fee schedule does not adequately pay them for sitting down and doing 5 body parts in an impairment report, specifically if you're doing a manual impairment rating on these cases. So it's in everyone's best interest, in my opinion, to rate a body part when it becomes MMI. You're going to be creating what I call an impairment library on the case. And it's very easy and consistent for adjusters, the nurse case managers, and the patients to understand their body parts. Now, when that last body part is impairment rating, then the total temporary disability stops and the individual can look into the case settlement. And all you need to do is to look over the library, put the body part values into the combining calculator, and you have your entire impairment report there. It's also a much more efficient way for the insurance adjuster to think about the claim, that table's off, done and finished. Not that I've got this knee hanging out there, I've got the shoulder hanging out there, I got a neck surgery coming up. This claim's never going to end. And that's not the way you want to think about it. You want it systematic, you want it accurate, and you want that report to be done when it's done. And done means done. You don't want it coming back in 2 to 3 years, having to go through the QME process, having the attorneys bring everything in front of the judge again because it wasn't done in a timely fashion or not done at all. So again, I'm a big advocate for impairment rating on body parts when that body part becomes maximally medically improved. And I want you to think about this next time you have that catastrophic injury come across your desk, or you're a doctor trying to treat someone with 9 body parts. There's nothing wrong with bringing someone in every 2 weeks if they have a bunch of body parts and addressing and treating each body part in its turn to get it to maximal medical improvement. Otherwise, all you're doing is you're delaying the inevitable and adding months and months, maybe years, onto the case closure when it doesn't need to happen that way. So I hope this has been helpful. I'd like you to think about multiple body parts and rating impairment for a body part when it becomes maximally medically improved. Again, Dr. John Alchemy with RateFast. Thank you.